In the previous episode, our MC Kim and his team found themselves trapped in a dungeon that transformed before their eyes. The recruits faced their greatest challenge yet. In this battle for survival, will they find a way out? Let's find out now. The instructors gather the recruits and explain the situation. Everyone's on edge. They have to clear this dungeon with just 4 recruits and 2 instructors, and they have no clue what kind of monsters are lurking inside. The real kicker, the instructors aren't even fully equipped for this kind of mission. It's like sending a plumber to fix a spaceship. But hey, they've got to work with what they've got and keep moving forward. The head instructor is sweating bullets, knowing that even a goblin could spell disaster. It would take him at least 10 minutes just to take one down. In a desperate brainstorm, the head instructor thinks about using the recruits' protective suits as a kind of meat shield. Yep, you heard that right. But then his conscience kicks in. He's put these recruits through grueling training, and they trust him. He can't just throw them to the wolves or goblins. In this case, his self-esteem won't allow it. The recruits are scared, but they press on, following their instructors. Suddenly, Minjun feels something's off. He glances back at one of the instructors. The head instructor notices and asks what's going on. Everyone turns to see the other instructor clutching his throat and struggling to breathe. Then, with thick foam frothing from his mouth, he collapses to the floor. The other instructor rushes to help but then collapses too, with white foam coming from his mouth. Both instructors are out cold. Kim checks on them and reassures the recruits that it's nothing serious, they've just fainted. Recognizing a familiar scent, he picks up the instructors and tosses them to the recruits. "Catch!" he shouts. The recruits catch them, and Kim tells them to stay near the exit and not follow him. They scream for him to come back, but he's already sprinting deeper into the dungeon, bursting with excitement. In his internal monologue, Kim explains what's going on. The instructors fainted due to demonic energy, something he never expected to find on Earth. This energy is deadly for normal humans, and even guardians need protection from it. But for a dark mage like Kim, it's like a phone charger. He runs deeper into the dungeon, excitement building as he gets closer to the source of the super dense demonic energy. Kim finally reaches a chamber filled with glowing purple crystals but finds nothing. Just silence. He's about to give up when he realizes he needs to look up. There, above him, is his prey, a massive alpha hound, pulsating with demonic energy. Its 4 eyes glow purple, its teeth are as big as knives, and its claws are sharper than cutthroat daggers. This is the fight Kim has been craving for ages. He never dreamed of facing a dark hound in this dungeon, so this was definitely a pleasant surprise for our hero. Dark hounds are vastly different from regular hounds, and Kim Minjun had encountered one during his first year in Isgard. Back then, he was terrified and underleveled, almost dying in the process. But now he's the final raid boss. Kim Minjun, no longer a rookie, is thrilled to see a familiar face. With full confidence in his abilities as a dark mage and hunter, he's ready to take this hellhound head-on. The monster, hanging from the ceiling, locks eyes with Kim and decides to pounce. Kim pulls his hand back, closing his fist just like he did when he punched that redstone before joining the Hunter Corps. His smile infuriates the monster, which lunges at him immediately. "Thanks for the meal," Kim says, as he delivers a punch so fast that it sends the monster flying with just a touch. The dark hound dies instantly, and an insane amount of demonic energy pours out. Kim, of course, takes the opportunity to absorb every bit of it, but the scent of the monster's blood is still in the air, just as sickening as Kim remembered. Dark hounds are notorious for their poisonous blood, which can cause human skin to rot on contact. Kim stares at his veiny hand, covered in the monster's blood. But here's the thing about dark magic, none of those poisonous effects apply. For dark mages like Kim, the venomous blood and demonic energy are more like a power-up than a threat. Kim drains the monster of all its demonic energy, feeling a rush he hadn't experienced in ages. He grins, relishing the moment. "Well, that was refreshing," he chuckles, wiping his hand clean. However, this whole ordeal left Kim wondering. How did a dark hound, a monster normally only found in Isgard, end up on Earth in an enclosed dungeon? He'd always considered the idea of monsters on Earth harboring demonic energy, but the instructors were completely unprepared for it. This had to be the first instance of something like this happening. He hadn't seen a single note about demonic energy in any training manuals or monster education at the training center. The possibility of a dark hound managing interdimensional travel on its own was laughable. Kim Minjun had a theory: only a dark mage as powerful as him, or maybe a saint who could utilize God's powers, could pull something like this off. Anyone else, no chance. Though, at the end, he wondered if he might just be overthinking things and tried to convince himself that it might just be a minor occurrence or coincidence. For now, he decided to take the monster's corpse back to report to his superiors. The journey wasn't over yet. They still had a dungeon to escape from. This new incident raised more questions than ever for Kim Minjun. Previously, new recruits were sent into the dungeon for training, and Minjun had showcased results far above his rank. The training was over, and the party was about to head back. But before they could step out of the gate, the dungeon transformed, and they lost their way. A wave of mysterious energy knocked out the instructors, and Minjun went ahead to investigate on his own. He came across the massive Dark Hound and, after defeating it, felt some of his demonic energy restored. Back to the present, the instructors are being woken up by the young recruits' voices. The head instructor opens his eyes, hearing the panic in their voices. They calm down a bit when he wakes up, but then he screams out loud, as if waking from a terrifying nightmare. This scares the life out of the recruits, who momentarily think their instructors have turned into zombies. After regaining composure, the instructors check to see if everyone is okay. The recruits assure them they're fine but reveal that Kim Minjun delved deeper into the dungeon alone, shocking the instructors. They can't believe Minjun would do such a thing. The head instructor thinks Minjun's behavior should get him kicked out of the academy, but he knows he doesn't have the authority to make that decision, especially since he fainted instead of keeping the recruits safe. Just when the instructor thinks about going out to save Minjun, one of the recruits points to the other side of the cave. There stands Minjun, carrying the corpse of the monster he killed on his back. The instructors are shocked once again. Seems like making this face is their only job. They look at the hound and realize it looks very different from the regular ones. Minjun drops the monster on the floor and tells the instructors to take a closer look. They analyze the body and realize it's the creature that caused them to faint. The recruits, on the other hand, are also in disbelief, wondering how their comrade managed to kill such a big monster. Minjun heads towards the cave's entrance and notices the portal gate has opened. The lead instructor puts a hand on Minjun's shoulder and asks if he really defeated the hound on his own. Instead of a verbal response, Minjun just nods. The instructor, sweating, nods back and acknowledges the recruit's achievement. The lead instructor orders the other one to lead the recruits out of the dungeon while he stays to talk to Minjun. Once everyone leaves, the instructor takes the opportunity to speak with him in front of the portal gate. He tells Minjun to detail everything in a report and give it to the lieutenant, emphasizing that he should leave nothing out, even how incompetent the instructors were. It turns out this guy doesn't care much about his reputation. He's way too honest for a soldier. Covering his face with embarrassment, he admits they fainted instead of keeping the recruits safe, and he has no excuse for letting his guard down. Finally, he thanks Minjun for making sure everyone was safe and genuinely appreciates it. Minjun blushes, glad to be of help but a little embarrassed by the compliments. The instructor puts his hat back on, saving the little dignity he has left, and says he must accept his wrongs like a man. He then suggests they head back. As they leave the cave with the portal blaring blue lights, the instructor wonders how to report the cause of his unconsciousness. Minjun, on the other hand, is ecstatic. He's just received a bunch of compliments from his comrades and instructors. It's a good day for him. As he's about to leave the dungeon, a notification window pops up, telling him that the error has been fixed. Minjun is frustrated as he questions, "What kind of error is this?" He curses at the system, stating that it's as ridiculous in this world as it was in the other one. The window pops up again, this time showing his stats: 60 points in strength, agility, and stamina, 10 points of demonic energy, and an E-ranking skill called corruption. He looks at the window and wonders if that's all because it seems extremely strange. Then, his eyes glance over something else on the window. He's the founder of a cult named Luminuna. Shocked and embarrassed, he recalls the backstory of this particular blunder. He started the cult out of his love for a character named Bloomy from a game called Dungeon Power Fighter. At the peak of his powers in Isgard, he created this cult as a joke to get rid of stalkers and creeps who pestered him about pursuing world dominance. Ironically, it only made them like him more. As he looks at his stat window, he realizes he's gotten much weaker. His stats are worse than he expected, which he knew would happen as a penalty for dimensional travel back to Earth. The most annoying part. Out of his endless skills, only one remained, and it's low ranking. An expression of pure frustration takes over his face. It feels like he's in a third-rate novel where the hero has to start from level 1. Stories like this made him extremely nauseated. Despite this setback, Minjun's confidence remains unshaken. He knows if he could reach the peak of dark magic powers in another world, he can do it again here. For now, his objective is crystal clear. He has to recover his powers as soon as possible to prevent any more delays in game development due to monsters popping up. Minjun shakes himself out of it, realizing it's doable. After all, he's faced the torture of Isgard, where the cafeteria food alone could break even the toughest warrior. The scene switches to the training center, where utter chaos has taken place. There are 3 reasons for this chaos: the dungeon gate closing during training, a lack of clear instructions from the lieutenant, and the fact that a single recruit destroyed a new species of monster they had never seen before. All this happened while the instructors were unconscious. Because of these unforeseen events, the recruits should have received private ranks and enjoyed some freedom until their dispatch, but that wasn't going to be the case. The recruits are in the sleeping room, wondering why they're on standby despite the crazy events of the last week of training. They're annoyed they don't even get to watch TV. What's the point of surviving a monster attack if you can't catch up on your favorite shows? One of Minjun's teammates asks if he really managed to capture a huge hound by himself. Minjun nonchalantly confirms it, while some recruits wonder if Minjun will get the rank of sergeant within 2 years. Others aren't so sure because the Hunter Corps exams are notoriously difficult. I mean, have you seen those questions? Even the monsters wouldn't pass. In the battalion commander's office, we see our hero standing tall and saluting the commander. The commander glances at Minjun and says, "Relax, soldier. You look like you're about to take on another monster." The commander salutes back and invites Minjun to come in. The lieutenant, lying on the floor in a very awkward position, is quickly told to get out. He salutes before stumbling out of the room, leaving Minjun alone with the commander. Laughing, the commander tells Minjun that any lieutenant who doesn't check the dungeons properly deserves to be punished. As he sits down, he waves off formalities, indicating they need to have a serious conversation. Minjun, wide-eyed and confused, listens as the commander begins. "Since you received the highest score, I have a special proposal for you," the commander says. He asks Minjun if he's interested in hearing it, and Minjun nods eagerly. The commander uses a metaphor, a crane among a flock of chickens, describing someone exceptionally skilled compared to their peers. He gazes at Minjun, marveling at his talent, glad to have such an extraordinary person under his command. He never imagined there would be a crane in his flock of chickens. Minjun is so skilled that he makes everyone else look like amateurs. The commander's thoughts wander as he considers Minjun's placement. It would be a waste of talent to put him in regular ranks. He knows about Minjun's ambition to rise quickly, but according to the rules, privates can't take promotion exams for at least a year after passing their recruitment finals. However, the commander proposes an exception, making Minjun's eyes sparkle with excitement. The commander laughs heartily, speaking with authority. He tells Minjun that if he joins the Hunter Corps in Korin, he'll use his power to grant this exception. "Just imagine," the commander says, "no waiting another year. What do you say?" Minjun contemplates the offer, and the two share a moment of quiet reflection. The commander wonders if he has proposed too much for the recruit because even someone of Minjun's skill would think twice before agreeing to join Corwin. Minjun is still mulling over the opportunity, thinking about the 104th Division, known as the Invincible Hunter Squad. His comrades had always warned him to avoid Korin, a place with constant snowfall, freezing weather, and the most extreme version of the front lines where monsters and dungeons appear out of thin air. You can imagine Minjun's initial thoughts. It's a fun opportunity. He wants to advance, no matter where he's placed, and the promotion exception is a big plus. Not to mention, a bunch of dungeons full of monsters sounds like the perfect conditions for him to become as powerful as possible. He needs to advance at any cost for his plans to work, because the higher his rank, the more leveling opportunities open up for him. With determination in his voice, Minjun agrees to the proposal. The commander, initially shocked by Minjun's swift agreement, tells him sternly that he will go, a look of accomplishment and self-confidence on his face. Outside the Hunter Corps training center, a group of newly made privates stand with their bags. One private, Raka, is crying his eyes out, saying goodbye to Minjun and begging him to keep in touch. Minjun swears he will, even as Raka pesters him from the car. Another guy watches and cringes, asking why Minjun would volunteer for Corwin. Minjun just looks at his friend and says it's too difficult to explain. His goal is something insane. The sky looks beautiful as the two friends talk. Raka asks if it's something like achieving max level 100 times. Minjun, already at max level 30 times, says it shouldn't be too difficult to reach 100. His friend calls him crazy, but with a tone of admiration. They bid farewell, and Minjun watches Raka leave, realizing the loudest guy is gone. Standing alone outside the training center, Minjun wonders why he's the only one left. Suddenly, a large military truck pulls up, braking right at his feet. The door opens, and he hears his name. A large man with a heavily muscular physique and thick sunglasses stands before him. His name tag reads Kim Minji. Minjun, with a sense of wonder, asks if Minji waited long. Minji, explaining it took too long because of the snow, tells Minjun to get in the back of the truck. Minjun quietly gets in and puts his stuff down, ready for the ride of his life. As the truck starts moving, Minjun is glad to begin his life as a soldier. He doesn't mind difficult training or frequent battles with monsters, but one thing terrifies him: hazing. He hopes he won't end up in miserable situations, being trolled or pranked by his comrades. He simply lacks the patience for it at the moment, but knows he must endure it for now. The ride goes smoothly, with calming views of pristine scenery and architecture. Minjun falls asleep, but wakes up to see snow falling everywhere. He can hardly believe his eyes as they reach the Invincible Hunter Corps' headquarters in Corwin. There really is snow here. Minjun walks with Kim Minji through the halls of the headquarters. Minji, with his veiny muscular hands, opens a door and pushes Minjun inside, announcing that he's the newbie. Minjun enters the room to see a bunch of boys either cleaning or relaxing. Minji orders them to feed Minjun and instruct him on what to do. The boys' eyes begin to glisten when they see a newbie, rallying around him and asking his name. Once they find out, they talk about how Minjun was called a super soldier, the guy who killed that Hound by himself. One of them picks up Minjun's bag and throws it to another boy, telling him to unpack Minjun's stuff. Minjun looks at them, realizing they might be the alphas of this storm. He also notices the way they are looking at him as if they've found a new play toy. They ask why he chose to volunteer for Corwin despite having such good grades. Minjun answers their query by saying that the front lines are the best place for experience and the fastest way to advance. They look at him in confusion for a second, then their expressions change completely as they call him crazy and admire his choice. They begin bombarding him with questions, asking if he has a sister or a girlfriend. Minjun says no to both questions, so they ask him to show them his talent. Wondering if they'll buzz off if he does, he raises a finger and tells them he'll show them one-finger push-ups. One of them scoffs, saying they can do that all day, but another tells Minjun to go ahead and show them. Their expressions change so fast it feels like someone took the light out of their lives. Minjun puts his finger on the ground and does full vertical push-ups using just his finger. They are completely shocked, having never expected him to do it vertically. As they marvel, one of them mentions that there's someone else who could do that too. Just then, a man dressed in uniform arrives at the dormitory door. He walks up to Minjun, who is still in the vertical push-up position, and tells him to stop showing off. Minjun immediately recognizes the voice. It's Sergeant Lisumho, his previous instructor. Minjun is taken aback to see him in the same dorm room, but the others, used to Lisumho, begin to berate and annoy him about being dispatched as an instructor. Frustrated, the sergeant screams that he has only 4 days left and tells them to leave him alone. Funnily enough, they were already tired of the conversation and just flip him the bird before moving on. The sergeant, now lying on a bed, turns on his phone and starts watching a video about volcanic dungeons. Minjun realizes that even in a space as tiny as this dorm, the rank difference is significant. The sergeant calls out to one of the privates named Dongjin, telling him to instruct Minjun since he's a junior. Minjun looks at Dongjin, wondering how he is his senior. Dongjin asks if Minjun wants to talk over some food because he has a permit to visit the PX. They head to the PX, and Dongjin tells Minjun to pick out whatever he wants. At the counter, the basket full of food leads to a bill of 300,000 won, and Dongjin pays it, shaking in his boots. Minjun chows down on the food, and Dongjin tells him to enjoy it. Minjun asks why they're not allowed to use the PX regularly, and Dongjin explains that according to the rank system, privates and below are only allowed to go there on weekends. Additionally, one needs to be a private first class or above to use the gyms, and if you want to use the PC room, you need to be a corporal. Kim almost chokes on his food upon hearing this, finding it crazy that you need such a high rank to use the PC room. Dongjin agrees that it's unreasonable but knows he can't change anything at his rank right now. With curiosity in his voice, Minjun asks if there's any way to change that. Dongjin explains that the only way is by getting to the rank of sergeant. Minjun is heartbroken and extremely frustrated because he was really looking forward to the PC room. Dongjin dives deeper, telling him it's very difficult to become a sergeant in the Hunter Corps. He shares a bit about himself, saying he's failed the advancement exam many times and has been stuck as a private first class for 3 years. Minjun thinks he should get promoted quickly so he can bring Dongjin up with him. He encourages Dongjin to keep trying, assuring him he'll surely get it next time. Just then, another bully arrives, putting his arms around Dongjin. Eating the delicious food by yourselves? He asks. Dongjin offers to have the guy join them, seeing as he's a corporal. Of course, the corporal says yes and begins chowing down, eating the chips, and drinking all the soda. Minjun looks at him in disdain, thinking, this guy is a piece of work. After eating, the corporal tells them he won't say anything about their chatting, but they better be present during firearms training tomorrow, or it will be their funeral. Dongjin steps in, saying he was about to explain firearms training to Minjun since it's different in Korin than other places. The corporal takes offense and begins to mock and ridicule Dongjin. Despite Dongjin's apologies, the corporal continues to bully him. Annoyed by what he's witnessing, Minjun decides he won't just sit there and watch. Under the table, Minjun channels demonic energy into the food the corporal is eating, cursing it so the corporal spits it out. The corporal's face goes numb, and he stands up abruptly. Dongjin asks what's wrong, but the corporal doesn't respond. Sweating profusely and feeling sick, the corporal mumbles something about checking the expiration date on the food. Trying to save his dignity, he says it's probably nothing and walks away holding his stomach. Minjun grins, knowing he used his corruption skill on the corporal. Turning back to Dongjin, Minjun asks about firearms training. Dongjin explains that in the Invincible Hunter Squad, they use bullets with even higher power than the monster-killing bullets used by regular Hunter Corps. The guns have a much higher kick. Imagine regular ICM bullets as ponies, but the Invincible Hunter Squad bullets are like wild stallions, Dongjin says. The recoil is so much it could challenge even an extremely skilled gunslinger. He adds that because monsters appear more frequently here, they need the extra firepower. Minjun finds the metaphor fitting, thinking about the ranged weapons he had to make do with in Isgard, comparing them to elephants. If those were elephants, and these are ponies and stallions, he feels confident in his ability to handle them. He grins excitedly, looking forward to the training. The day of the training arrives, and the soldiers head to the location. The firearms training facility is filled with shooting noises. Soldiers blast away at their targets, flares lighting up the room. Among them is Minjun, skillfully handling his weapon and drawing impressed looks from his comrades. Minjun is slightly disappointed that he missed one shot. The target, flabbergasted, states that 19 shots were direct hits and only one was a miss. His two alpha roommates are shocked, while Dongjin stands in awe of Minjun's gun skills. Minjun stands proudly with his gun, as people wonder whether he's a cyborg or just incredibly lucky. Up in a booth, two shadowy figures Lieutenant Kim Mitchell and Sergeant Hyatisiak look down at the firearms training, completely entranced by Minjun's skill. The roommates ask Minjun how he shot like that, and he simply says he just did what he was instructed to do. Kim Minji, the hulking behemoth of a man, emerges from behind the two so-called alphas and praises Minjun's shooting. He says he looks forward to seeing Minjun shoot in the special training in the afternoon. Minjun is immediately intrigued. The alpha roommates start pestering Kim Minji, accusing him of being biased towards Minjun. Kim Minji tells them to quit it and put their helmets on. The rest of the soldiers start clapping for Minjun, and Dongjin compliments him even more. Minjun thanks him and asks what the special firearms training entails. Dongjin says he doesn't know much about it but shares what he knows. The special firearms training consists of two-person teams working in a training facility to eliminate monsters. On the way to the destination, the monsters will be moving targets and will attack them. There will also be civilian target plates that pop up randomly, and they must avoid shooting them as that will result in an automatic failure. Dongjin reassures Minjun not to worry about the actual monsters, saying it will be a controlled environment with proper supervision. However, if Dongjin knew Minjun, he'd know that nothing gets our hero more excited and joyous than the prospect of fighting real monsters. After the firing test, the group of soldiers enjoys lunch, a feast with lots of different dishes to choose from. Dongjin is still in shock at the fact that Minjun managed to hit 19 shots at the target, while Minjun compliments Dongjin for hitting 13 shots himself. Dongjin, modest as always, mentions that he has some experience but isn't very good. He believes Sergeant Lee is one of the best soldiers, averaging at least 17 shots, making him the top shooter in the squad. Minjun listens while eating and acknowledges that since 10 hits is the squad's average, Sergeant Lee is indeed much better than the rest. However, he also realizes that he is now officially the #1 shooter. Dongjin then gives Minjun a word of encouragement, saying he's sure that Minjun will do great in the special firearms training. Minjun, curious, asks why Dongjin, who mentioned two-person teams, is speaking as if he won't be joining him. Dongjin explains that the executives decide the teams, so they never know who they'll be paired with. This makes Minjun even more curious, and he asks how the teams are decided. Dongjin starts explaining a rumor he heard. The teams are decided through a method called the letter lottery, essentially a raffle designed to create random pairings. The scene switches from the cafeteria to the special firearms shooting range. Burly Sergeant Minji is barking orders, telling the soldiers to get into their bulletproof vests and be on standby as the training will commence in 5 minutes. Every soldier in the room is gossiping, wondering what the special firearms test will be like. Minjun is standing there, minding his business, but of course, he doesn't get peace for too long. A man dressed in uniform comes yelling that he's on the team with the newbie, looking at Minjun. It turns out Minjun is teamed up with none other than the corporal, who enjoyed hazing. The corporal walks in, boasting that a corporal and a private are worlds apart, and flaunting his own skill. Minjun is definitely taken aback, wondering why he had to team up with this guy of all people. He also realizes that the corporal hasn't learned his lesson yet. The corporal starts talking to Minjun, telling him that the average finish time in the squad is 3 minutes, and that Minjun should aim to meet or exceed it. His face has a devious look as he says that Minjun must finish within 3 minutes, or he's going to regret it. Minjun simply looks at him without responding, which annoys the corporal. He asks Minjun why he isn't replying, pestering him by saying that he's lost confidence and his 19 perfect shots were just a fluke. Minjun is internally frustrated, thinking about how much of a hassle this guy is, but he just says that he'll try his best to shut the blithering idiot up. The corporal doesn't care about that, he just wants Minjun to provide results. He says if Minjun finishes later than him, he'll regret it. He points at the squad, talking to Sergeant Minji, and says they should observe the team going ahead. The two soldiers stand in different elevators, while Minji stands in the middle, telling them to get ready. It's Kim Munji and Jong Han Yang, and both state that they're ready. They start descending. The special firearms training is a unique creature. It involves two team members in separate elevators being sent down to the underground facility. This tactical training teaches soldiers to slay monsters and protect civilians. Now, it has evolved into a competition among the troops. It's a race, with the goal being to reach the end fastest and cleanest, pressing the finish button before your opponent. Minjun looks at the large scoreboard to ensure he understands the situation. There are different sized monster icons, and he wonders why. The corporal explains that it showcases the threat level. The more dangerous a monster, the bigger the icon. He begins explaining the format of the special firearms trial. There are 2 monsters in each lane, and 1 encounter is randomized. Due to this format, you have no clue what you're getting into, and it will surprise you. In the lanes, we see a participant currently in the trial running into a rake toad, a large and powerful creature. The rake toad attacks with its tongue, and he seems to have gotten unlucky with the monster selection. On the screen, we can see that the participant ran into the bigger monster ahead. Minjun realizes that even if he moves fast, bad luck with monsters means his opponent could catch up. The opponent runs into a large rat and quickly shoots it to shreds. Confident of an easy trial, he immediately encounters a huge earthworm. Meanwhile, the guy who fought the rake toad just got another one to battle. Visibly frustrated, he unloads a whole clip into it. Annoyed, he thinks his opponent has probably already won. But when he reaches the finish button, it's empty. No one is near it. He walks over and presses it with a big smile. The buzzer sounds, and the crowd celebrates as the challenge is completed in 2 minutes and 24 seconds. The winner mocks the loser, while the loser just complains about his bad luck. It turns out they had a bet, and now the loser must treat the winner at the PX. On the way back, they notice that, besides being late, the loser also accidentally shot a civilian, which disqualified him. They walk out bantering about what to buy, and the corporal mentions they made a bet before going in. This catches Minjun's attention, and he's intrigued by the idea of a bet. He suggests they make one too, and he proposes that the loser must grant the winner one wish. This makes the corporal laugh, but he decides to humor Minjun out of overconfidence. He says there's nothing a mere private like Minjun could offer him, but eventually agrees. He decides that if Minjun loses, he'll have to give him his salary for 3 months. Though Minjun is a bit disappointed that the corporal couldn't come up with something more interesting than money, he agrees to the condition. The corporal is pleased and confident in his own abilities. Dongjin notices the two talking and starts to feel a bit nervous. Meanwhile, Sergeant Minji shouts for the next group to get ready. Minjun and the corporal step into their separate elevators, preparing for the trial ahead. As Minjun and the corporal gear up for their next challenge, tensions escalate with a bet on the line. Stay tuned to see if Minjun's skills prevail or if the corporal's overconfidence leads to his downfall. If you've enjoyed this journey so far, drop a comment with you and don't forget to subscribe for more adventures.